My name is Vex Oren, and I was a junior sensor officer on the patrol cruiser Halvin's Reach. Before that day, my job was simple and quiet. I watched empty space. I logged distant stars. I checked the same border sector again and again, hoping nothing interesting would ever happen. Boring days meant safe days. That was what everyone on my crew believed. We were part of the Cathrix border fleet, a small patrol group that watched the edge of our territory. Our sector was far from the center of galactic trade, far from any major conflict, and far from anything that mattered. Most officers saw a posting here as a punishment. I saw it as a chance to learn without pressure. I liked studying ships, energy signatures, and hull designs. I liked understanding how things worked before I had to explain them to someone in charge. That morning started like every other morning. I sat at my console, sipping warm mineral water, watching soft blue lines move across my screen. The captain, an older Cathrix named Doran Vess, walked the bridge with his hands behind his back, the way he always did when he was thinking about something unrelated to work. Our pilot hummed a tune under her breath. Nothing about the day felt unusual. Then my console beeped. It was a small sound, barely noticeable, the kind of alert that usually meant a rock, a piece of debris, or a stray signal bouncing off a moon. I almost ignored it. But something made me look closer. The sound repeated, steady and patient, like it was waiting for me to pay attention. I checked the readout. A single contact had appeared near a dead moon on the edge of our patrol path. No engine emissions, no shields active, no obvious movement. It was just sitting there, quiet, like a stone in the dark. "Captain," I said, "I have a contact. Unidentified, low power state." Doran walked over, glancing at my screen. "Debris? Too symmetrical for debris," I said. "It has a defined hull shape." He raised an eyebrow. "Distance? Far enough that it hasn't noticed us, or it doesn't care." That got his attention. He nodded once. "Run a full scan. Let's see what we're dealing with." I felt a small flutter of excitement. Most of my scans involved rocks, ice chunks, or old satellites. This was the first real unknown ship I had ever been asked to examine. I adjusted my instruments, aligned the long-range sensors, and sent out a focused scanning pulse. The first data packet came back strange. My screen flickered, then refreshed with numbers that made no sense. Hull density readings were unusually high, almost impossible for a ship of that size. I assumed a sensor error and ran the scan again. The same result appeared, this time even clearer. "That can't be right," I muttered. "What can't be right?" Doran asked, stepping closer. "The hull," I said. "It's not one layer. It's many. Overlapping plates, different densities, almost like insulation stacked on top of insulation. I have never seen anything like this." Doran frowned. "Explain." I pulled up a cross-section model on the main display, layers of material stacked over each other in complex patterns, almost like the ship had been built to survive damage rather than avoid it. Most of our ships were designed for speed and precision strikes. This ship looked like it was built to take a hit and keep going. "It's heavy," I said. "Too heavy for its size, if it were built like our ships. But if it's meant to absorb damage instead of avoiding it, then the weight makes sense." The bridge crew exchanged glances. A young tactical officer named Ressa leaned over her console. "Maybe it's an old cargo hauler, something abandoned." "No," I said, my eyes narrowing at another reading. "There's a power signature. Weak, but stable. It's not abandoned. It's asleep." I could feel the mood shift from mild curiosity to something more careful. Doran crossed his arms. "Continue the scan. I want a full profile before we approach." I nodded and adjusted the frequency of my pulses, trying to get a clearer picture of the ship's internal systems. As new data poured in, I began to notice something troubling. The reactor core, though throttled down to almost nothing, showed signs of a containment structure built for much higher output than what it currently produced. It was like finding a small campfire inside a fireplace built for a much larger blaze. "This reactor," I said slowly, "is running at a fraction of its potential. If it were active at full capacity, it could power something far larger than this ship's apparent size." "Redundant systems?" Ressa asked. Maybe, I said. Or maybe the ship just doesn't need to use all its power to stay ready. Doran walked closer to my station, staring at the layered schematics. Where is it from? I ran the profile through our known database, cross-referencing hull shape, energy patterns, and material composition. After a moment, a single word appeared on my screen. Human. The bridge crew reacted with quiet laughter. Ressa smiled. Humans? That explains the strange design. They're new to interstellar contact. Their tech is inconsistent, sometimes advanced, sometimes clumsy. I've heard stories. I had heard similar stories too. Everyone had. Humans were considered a young species, unpredictable, and often unprepared for serious combat. Some officers found their reputation amusing. Others saw them as an oddity, worth studying but not truly worth fearing. Still, something about this ship did not match those stories. I kept scanning, checking each system twice, unable to shake a growing sense of unease. Continue your analysis, Doran said, his voice calm but serious. I want confirmation before we log this. I nodded and adjusted my instruments again, focusing on the ship's weapon systems. This was where things became even stranger. Captain, I said, my voice tightening slightly, I'm reading multiple weapon hardpoints, more than I expected for a ship this size. How many? I counted carefully, checking each point of energy alignment along the hull. At least 12 primary mounts, possibly more hidden beneath outer plating. Ressa straightened in her seat. 12? That's more than our own cruiser carries. Most of them are unpowered, I added quickly. Cold, inactive. It's like they didn't feel the need to arm themselves for us. The bridge fell into a heavier silence. Doran studied the schematic on the main screen, his expression unreadable. Unpowered doesn't mean harmless, he said finally. It could mean the opposite. If they don't feel the need to arm against us, that tells us something about how they see this encounter. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. I hadn't thought of it that way, but he was right. A predator sleeping peacefully near smaller creatures wasn't reassuring. It was a sign that it saw no real threat around it. I continued digging through the data, searching our old intelligence archive for any similar hull markings. It took a few minutes, but eventually I found something. A partial match appeared, linked to a set of records from several years ago. Captain, I found something, I said. This ship's hull design matches records from an event called the Third Perimeter Incident. Doran's eyes narrowed. That was labeled as an exaggerated report, unconfirmed. I don't think it was exaggerated, I said quietly. I think it was underreported. I pulled up the old data files, comparing them side by side with my current readings. Where the old files described a small skirmish involving minor damage, my new readings suggested something far more significant. The ship in front of us likely carried enough armament and defensive capability to survive engagements that would have destroyed several of our own cruisers combined. The room felt colder somehow, even though nothing about the environment had changed. They were never trying to hide their strength, I said slowly, almost to myself. They just never needed to show it. Doran took a long breath, staring at the sleeping ship on the main view screen. Continue monitoring. Do not attempt closer approach. I nodded, my hands steady despite the tension building inside me. I adjusted my scanning array once more, hoping to gather final details before we withdrew. As I refined the signal, something unexpected happened. The ship's exterior lights flickered on. Not brightly, not aggressively, just a soft, steady glow along its hull, like something waking from a light doze rather than reacting to danger. They're powering up, Ressa said, alarm creeping into her voice. No, I said, staring at my readings in disbelief. They already were. This whole time, our scans weren't just going out. Something was answering them. Doran turned sharply toward me. Explain. I traced the data pathways, realizing what had happened. Every scan I sent out had triggered a quiet, almost invisible response from the human ship. It wasn't ignoring us. It was watching us the entire time, gathering its own information as we gathered ours, all without alerting anyone on our bridge. They've been scanning us back, I said, since the moment we detected them. The bridge went silent. Even Ressa, usually quick with a comment, said nothing. A soft chime rang out across our communication system. It wasn't an alert from our ship. It was an incoming transmission. Doran hesitated only a moment, before nodding to our communications officer. "Open the channel!" A calm voice filled the bridge, unhurried and steady, almost too relaxed for the situation. It spoke our language with only slight unfamiliarity, as if translated carefully, rather than learned naturally. "Catheric's vessel. This is the human ship Solus Hold. We acknowledge your scan. We recommend you adjust your course away from this position. No hostility is intended, but continued presence here is unnecessary. No threats, no demands. Just a simple suggestion delivered with the confidence of someone who already knew the outcome of any confrontation before it happened." Doran's jaw tightened. He looked at me, then at Ressa, then back at the view screen. Helm, reverse course, slow and steady, no sudden movements. Our pilot immediately began adjusting our trajectory, guiding us away from the dead moon and the ship resting beside it. I watched my sensors carefully, half expecting some kind of pursuit or warning shot. Nothing came. The human ship remained exactly where it was, lights glowing softly, weapons still mostly unpowered, as if our departure meant little to its own plans. As we moved farther away, I found myself staring at the data still displayed on my screen. Layers of armor built for endurance rather than elegance, a reactor core capable of far more than it currently produced, weapon systems left cold simply because they weren't needed against us, and a message delivered not with anger, but with quiet patience, like a parent gently guiding a child away from something dangerous without needing to raise their voice. "Vex," Doran said, breaking my thoughts. "Compile a full report. Everything you found. I want it documented clearly." "Yes, Captain," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. As I worked on the report, I thought about the difference between what I had expected and what I had found. I had expected clumsy engineering, exaggerated stories, and outdated warnings that no longer applied. Instead, I found a species that didn't feel the need to prove its strength unless provoked. A species that could remain calm, distant, and unreadable, even when facing something unfamiliar. I thought about the phrase Ressa had used earlier, light-hearted comment about humans being unpredictable and often unprepared. I wondered if that reputation was less about weakness and more about how quietly they carried their true capability. Perhaps humans weren't unprepared at all. Perhaps they simply didn't feel the need to show preparation unless it truly mattered. By the time I finished compiling the report, the bridge had grown calmer, though the tension never fully disappeared. Doran read through my findings carefully, his expression unreadable as he studied each section. "This will need to go to Fleet Command," he said finally. "They need to understand what we encountered here." "Do you think they'll believe it?" Ressa asked. Doran paused before answering. "I think they'll have to." I sat quietly, watching the dead moon fade into the distance on our rear display. My mind kept returning to that quiet, patient tone in the human transmission. There had been no anger in it, no fear. Just a simple suggestion, delivered with the confidence of someone who had already measured every possible outcome and found no reason to worry. As our ship continued its retreat, I opened a private note on my console. Something for myself, rather than the official report. I wanted to remember exactly how this moment felt. The strange mixture of curiosity and unease that had filled me from the first beep on my screen to the final words of that calm human voice. I wrote a single line, simple but heavy with meaning. We came looking for an unknown target, hoping to learn something new about a young species. Instead, we learned that being underestimated is sometimes the greatest advantage a species can have. The Solus Hold never needed to prove anything to us. It simply existed, quiet and steady, until the moment it decided our presence was no longer necessary. And in that quiet decision, I understood something my earlier assumptions had completely missed. Humans were not simple, nor were they careless. They were patient, and patience, more than any weapon or shield, was the most dangerous thing we had scanned that day. As the Halvan's Reach continued its slow retreat through the dark, I closed my console and leaned back in my seat, the hum of the ship steady beneath me. For the first time since joining this patrol assignment, I felt something new stirring inside me, a mixture of respect and quiet caution. We had come looking for information. We left with something far more valuable, a lesson about assumptions, patience, and the quiet strength of a species we had underestimated. I doubted this would be the last time our paths crossed the humans, and somehow, Despite the unease still settling in my chest, I found myself looking forward to what we might learn next.